afternoon, and thank you for joining us, myself, Melissa Slaymaker, and Adriana Marais at the MITT Summit 2020. We're very happy to be here. Thank you for joining me, Adriana.
Thanks, Melissa. A pleasure to be here. Hi, everyone.
I'd like to do just an introduction for those who do not know you. Dr. Adriana Marais is actually a quantum biologist with a background in theoretical physics. She's the founder of Proudly Human and director at the Foundation of Space Development Africa. She's also a member of the South African government's ministerial task team for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And Adriana has got one goal, and that is to, get to Mars. So you describe yourself as an aspiring extraterrestrial, I've heard. Adriana, what's given you the kind of passion to go into Mars potentially and become an explorer? Where did it all start?
So thanks, Melissa. It's a grand goal, but one that I'm very happy to not be alone in. And I must say there's an increasing network, and I could even say flurry of activity towards Mars this year, but let me get to that in a moment. So as a child, or as children, let me say, I think we can all admit that we are born curious explorers. Somehow down the way as adults, perhaps we become slightly more risk averse and maybe our exploration is not as physical as we may have imagined exploring as kids, around the solar system. But for some of us, we keep that dream and we continue working towards it. So exploring beyond Earth is something I've always imagined and something that I feel increasingly really lucky to be in this era. And so I've studied physics. I've looked at research into the origins of life. And just this year, 2020, there have been so many developments on both fronts. So we've seen South African-born Elon Musk's company SpaceX launch crew to the International Space Station, becoming then the first private company to launch crew into space. And this is a massive milestone towards SpaceX's goal of making us multiplanetary. So that means at least getting to Mars. So launching crew to the space station is a massive achievement during the lockdown this year in May. Super excitingly, we've seen the UAE launch in the first attempt, congratulations, the HOPE mission to Mars, which is currently en route, the orbital HOPE mission. And this is a massive achievement, inspiring the region, but all humans with hope, I believe, as a relative newcomer to the space industry compared to the US, which has been in the game for decades. This is a really inspiring achievement, and we look forward to the super interesting science that will be done from orbit by the HOPE mission. We've got China and NASA having launched rovers successfully also this year in July to Mars. So we can really say there's traffic en route to the planet that I hope to see with my own eyes at some point. Let's hope maybe in the next decade. But certainly all of these missions from different corners of the world are really impressive and important steps towards exploration of this planet. And then that was the other point I wanted to mention, the detection of phosphine in the atmosphere of Venus, which was like last week. So things are really getting interesting. And for all of those children like me out there who looked up at the night sky and thought, are there living things out there? Looking back, well, we're getting closer to perhaps finding the answer to that with methane being detected on Mars, which we find usually to be associated with the presence of microbial life. Phosphine in the atmosphere of Venus, which usually is associated with life activity. And these are our two neighbors. So things are really getting interesting in terms of expanding our view beyond our Earth to our next door neighbors and hopefully onwards from there. But I think as children, we are really curious explorers. So it's an exciting time for children and adults to be alive as we expand our horizons.
That's amazing. And I also personally very interested in just following all these exciting new developments. I think it's the next thing, right? So with regards to Proudly Human, the organization that builds, off-world systems looking at renewable, the potential of, creating an environment where you can live in an extreme situation like the Antarctic. I know you've had a mission there, or the deserts, or potentially the moon or Mars. Talk us through about what Proudly Human is trying to achieve, and also the relevance for the technology being developed to help us, on Earth, to look at some of the, the problems that we still have here.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. That's perfectly put, because that is the endeavor with Proudly Human, to assist me in my dream of exploring beyond Earth, but at the same time to develop the kind of thinking and the kind of systems that we're going to need to advance to the next level here on Earth. And I don't need to, but I will remind all of us of the massive challenges that we face here on Earth. So, there's a growing population of humans, consumers, let's say, who require a lot of resources. I really don't like that description of humans as consumers, but unfortunately that is a lot of what we do currently in the current system, consume resources. So the more of us that there are in the current way of doing things, the more resources we need, which has resulted in the destruction of the natural environment to an unprecedented degree, which is resulting in a species extinction event, usually which is caused by things like meteorite impacts. But now we're living in a time where it's actually us that's actually causing the extinction of a whole bunch of species that we share the planet with because of our requirement for resources, which leads to, and I don't need any data, I think, to convince you of this, the increased risk of pandemics and associated climate change. And I haven't even mentioned asteroids and solar flares and things, which are always part of the ways in which we could see an outcome that we don't want. So I'm not here to harp on about the negative, but the way I see it is that these challenges can actually be boiled down to a single problem, luckily, because when we can simplify problems, we can start to think about solving them. And I believe poor resource management is at the heart of it. It's not that there are too many humans. We live in a really big universe, okay, really big. So it's not that there are too many humans. Let's move away from that. It's not that we need to destroy the natural environment. We can live in harmony with the species that we actually rely on for survival. The jungles that we insist on cutting down regulate our air and our rainfall and our temperatures. So we need to learn to live in harmony, whether on this planet or beyond, with the species that we share the planet with, and with the resources that we find ourselves in the midst of. So resource management, we need to get better at it, because only recently have we kind of globalized, this word globalization, which means now we've got a global communications network, we've spread ourselves across most of the surface of the earth. Now we feel like we're a global society. And once we reach that level, we need to get better at managing our resources, because we're not just little pockets of villages anymore. We're now a formidable population covering the surface of the planet. So how do we start thinking about getting better at managing resources? Because maybe we're not doing it, certainly we're not doing it fast enough. A lot of cities are water scarce now. Food production has not increased as much as population has. When we couple that with rainfall changes, food security, water security, never mind power and communication systems that need to be distributed to 8, 9, 10 billion people. These are challenges. So these are not insurmountable challenges, definitely challenges that we can deal with. And the idea of setting up camp on the moon or setting up camp on Mars is a great way, whether it's a thought experiment or a real practical project to do this, is a great way to inspire people to get involved, I think. So if we tell kids that they need to study STEM because we've polluted the river and now they need to devise a new microbial-based wastewater management program, that's fine. Some people might enjoy that. But if we tell them they need to design a wastewater management system for Mars, and this is super exciting because we can think about living there, I think this just adds to the inspiration of encouraging the youth to get involved in science, technology, engineering, and maths, not only just to solve the mess that we've created here on Earth, which is solvable, but we need some imagination and inspiration for that. And the idea of setting up camp on a really tricky place like Mars just gives us the extra investment and imagination that we're going to need, I think, to also solve problems on Earth. So that was the more philosophical side of it. But practically, luckily, as I said, we can boil down all the challenges that we will face on Mars, I think, to good resource management. And what are the resources? There's a few basic categories that really don't change no matter where in the solar system or beyond we are. And that's wherever you have humans, you're going to need power. You're going to need water, you're going to need food, and you're going to need communication systems. Yes, you're going to need healthcare and transport, but let's say once you have these four in place, then you can start thinking about the rest of the services. So the resources of power, water, food, and communication systems, we can think about setting these up in as resource efficient way as possible through using 3D printing from local resources, through recycling water, through 3D printing photovoltaics from sand. These are the kinds of specifics that we'd be looking into. But yeah, we believe if we can arrive in Antarctica with some shipping containers with our stuff and set up camp in a completely off-grid place like Antarctica, where we set up our power, our water, our food, and our communication systems, and our shelter, and our heating systems from scratch. This is hopefully an inspiration in terms of what kind of infrastructure is needed no matter where on the planet we are, because the poverty in which so many of us live means that extreme environments are not limited to the moon and Mars. The length that people have to walk in some communities to get fresh water, clean water, the large amount of effort and not always successfully that people have to invest to get nutritious food for their household. These are the kind of challenges that we will face whatever planet we're on. Huge challenges that we face on Earth in terms of the number of humans who don't have access to nutritious food, clean water, reliable power. Currently our power seems to be functioning well here, but in South Africa this has been an issue lately. Communication systems, I think we've all learned during the pandemic just how key that is. A communication system failure on top of something like a pandemic would have just been unimaginably worse. So, us sitting here now communicating via our online platforms is really an indication of how crucial having a communication system which relies on power is. These are the basic categories, and we'd like to arrive in, I've mentioned Antarctica, but also the deserts. There, obviously, the water constraints are comparable to Mars in terms of needing to have a really efficient water management system. Like every drop is precious, literally. So this can be an inspiration for city municipalities to be less wasteful in terms of their water systems. There's so many ways in which the developments and advancements in knowledge for Mars can positively impact the direction that we're going here on Earth as well. And Proudly Humans Off-World Project hopes to bring big teams of collaborators together towards getting closer to these goals and becoming more resource efficient.
And tell me, mindset in all of this. So you talked about communication and power and nutritional food and water. They're all very essential. But if you're in isolation, I guess we can compare it now. We can all put ourselves back in 4 months ago with being in lockdown. How important do you think is mindset for getting through those challenging times, I guess, ahead?
Definitely. So in some sense, as you pointed out a few months ago, we were all involved in a training program for life in space. Maybe you didn't realize, but the isolation, the confinement, and the anxiety that surrounds a new and challenging environment, that's pretty much training for life in space. So congratulations, everyone. If you were part of a lockdown, you should be issued a certificate for survival off-world, because I think we all re-evaluated, where, is our power reliable? Okay, if we're in a place where it is, that's fine. Tick, is our water reliable? Good. But some of us may not have been in places where that was obvious. Communication systems, where we're going to get our food if we've got curfews going on and things. So that, in fact, feeds into, let me tell you the story of me in the beginning of the lockdown. So I left Cape Town in January before realizing this scenario, of course. In January, it was still early days. And then my partner and I were busy building a cabin down in the valley. But then we realized we're going to have to finish this cabin as cheaply. Now that everybody's income was then a bit unknown. So we said as cheaply as possible and as lightweight as possible, we need to build this cabin off-grid down in the valley, and that's where we're going to go live. So we did that and built from scratch. So it wasn't wasn't in Antarctica or in the desert, but in a beautiful forest with a river. But this was like iteration 0 for the kind of projects that I'm imagining. So literally with your own hands and your own mind, planning the structure and carrying the stuff down and building up from scratch something that you can live in. So as you say, mindset. So the power, okay, we brought car battery. We didn't have enough money for a solar array, which turns out to be a huge investment. And anyway, it's down in the valley, so that wasn't an option. So we had to think about batteries for power, eventually a generator. Luckily, the river is there for water, food from the shop. I can't say we were foraging in the forest. It wasn't that bad, but that could be an option. No, we went to the shop for that, and the comms is never great. So the challenges of trying to keep your professional life going while you're not able to connect very well on video calls. So back to your point on mindset, this was a great challenge to see like what are the minimum resources that a person needs to feel like they are comfortable and functional. So washing your clothes in the river, waiting for them to dry, doing your own composting toilets. This was a really hands-on kind of very entry-level, I wouldn't say high-tech in terms of the space technologies we hope to develop, but an entry-level exercise in, as you point out rightly, mindset, because at the end of the day, you need to work with what you have and then find your happy space in that scenario somehow. I think for me, the biggest challenge was not so much the washing clothes in the river, which had an aspect of fun for a few months, but I'm not sure whether I could go on like that indefinitely. But the communications was really an issue, and I think as a society, that's something we need to focus on, especially now that we've seen how amazingly things can be brought online during such a time when we're social distancing or for whatever reason we're not going to be there physically, which is a nice way to work where possible. We're going to need to think about investing in improving our communications networks. So I don't necessarily mean going to 5G, but enabling more people to be able to enter into the existing network, whether it's 3G or 4G or where it depends on how rural you are, how well you can connect. But increasingly, I think we have to view data as an essential resource. So with respect to the United Nations Sustainability goals, as much as nutritious food and clean water and a warm, safe place to live and sleep are absolutely essential requirements, which so many live without. I think communications, the price of data, should also be enter into discussions in terms of human rights, that all of our people are going to have access to this wealth of knowledge online, as well as the capability to function as a professional or as a part of a community or a family member through online facilities. So as much as we are still battling to ensure that all 8 billion of us have access to nutritious food and clean water, I think power and resultant communication systems on top of that are something we now need to add to the vital list of things to do, because then people can really explore what it is to be human, and then the human mindset can come out. It's difficult to be curious and passionate and creative when you're wondering whether or not you're going to be able to do your job interview that afternoon because your battery's flat and your signal has just disappeared. This is a kind of practical challenge that people face. So let's add connectivity definitely to the list of things that we need in order to really be who we are as humans, curious, passionate, and creative. Then we really explore our mindsets. I think once we've got these basic resources taken care of, then we can really engage in being positive members of our communities and helping those around us and so on.
Yes, I definitely agree with you. And a question I have, like, just as part of the Women in Tech community, and, what can we as a community do more to inspire the youth to, get involved with, projects in space and to take up STEM fields within their education and in their careers? From your point of view, I mean, it's so important to inspire the youth. What can we as a community do more? And what is Proudly Human doing as well?
Yeah, so Proudly Human, we've got a current project where we're setting up at the Cape Town Science Centre, which is obviously closed or still closed now, but we're hoping to launch our installation next year. So this is a great partnership of Proudly Human with the Cape Town Science Centre, which has many programs daily with lots of children coming through from different school programs, and now they're going to be able to play in our Marais habitat. So really go into the agri units and watch the plants growing, maybe help us harvest for the restaurants of the Cape Town Science Centre. The water would be extracted from the atmosphere through our technology partner, who's got an atmospheric water extractor, which can generate 100 litres a day with one of their smaller units. So just to show, the idea of sustainability physically, that the water's coming out of the air, going into the place where the seeds grow. The solar panels are providing the electricity for the pumps, and our solar partners are going to be laying out their panels there. We've got a habitat from the guys who build pods for Antarctica. So this is a proper resilient habitat built for high wind speeds and cold temperatures, but it'll just be in the courtyard at the Cape Town Science Centre, so kids can go and play and learn. And I believe adults, because a lot of our technology partners maybe understand their side of the integration, but we'd really like to show what we mean with the IoT systems, with the big, nice, easy to use touchscreen where you just push power and then you can watch the current power generation. You push water, you can see how many milliliters per second are running through. You push agri and you can see the camera, which is monitoring the growth of the crops in there. So just to show on a very basic level what we mean when we say this resource efficient habitat that gets set up off grid with all of its own resources provided within the same structure, that you can pack up, then put in the back of a truck and drive it off somewhere else and set up the whole thing from scratch again. So that's an important aspect of showing people what we mean, I think. And then, we hope to make a documentary series on all the projects we do when I return to Antarctica to do the overwinter version and so on. We're still finalizing permits and things for that. But I think it's great to be able to interact with entities like a science centre, which already has a lot of foot traffic, to then think about what aspect of your idea, project, business you'd like to then demonstrate to children and their parents at the end of the day, who come to these spaces. From the perspective of the Foundation for Space Development, where I'm a director, we hope to inspire the youth through Africa to reach for the stars by designing and putting Africa's first mission to the moon on the moon. Because I think space feels quite far away for many youth in Africa. Watching rocket launches, I don't know how many people get up to do that or how many people hear about it, but because it's not happening here in Africa, it feels very far away. Maybe even like a movie, because we watch a lot of science fiction, and I'm not sure to what extent the youth in Africa are following, SpaceX's activities and things. And I think to bring that home, we need to be launching from Africa. We need to be setting up propulsion system startups that can start to think we've got a massive equatorial region in Africa. We should be launching our own satellites. So our mission to the moon is just kind of a flagship activity that will hopefully show that it's possible with an African collaboration to build a radio telescope. That's the idea, to put on the far side of the moon, which will be doing new science, a world first, as well as Africa's first attempt, hopefully successfully, to put something on the surface of the moon, to make it real, in terms of the youth in Africa, knowing that this project has been designed and built and not launched from yet, but we hope to see launch capability soon from Africa. We've got an ideal placement on the planet for that, a large part of the equator. So, I think doing so, whether it's at something like an installation at a science center or an actual launch to the moon, I think doing from Africa is really important. So just to say, keep going with whatever people are doing. You are an inspiration through the people that see what you're doing. So I think, first of all, believe in what you're doing and keep going, because your work is an inspiration to those. And as you succeed, you can grow your network and reach more people with your message of what you are doing. But I think at the end of the day, the biggest inspiration we can give to the youth is to do things we are passionate about. And it's been tough during the lockdown. Many people have lost jobs or had to think about shifting careers, or as myself, having been involved in events, this has definitely been a time to reevaluate how are we going to function in this new world. So I think this is a great opportunity to think about bringing more of the things that we're passionate about into our lives, because this is how we inspire the children around around us and on a community level, but further afield, is by doing things we are passionate about. So for those of us who think, well, I'm not completely passionate about that, but I'm more passionate about that, let's try to shuffle things around to put more focus and more of our time on the things that we are passionate about, because this is why we're here. We're not here to, be bored while we are spending our energy and time. We were supposed to be doing things we love. So yes, there is a way to match that with being able to survive financially as well. It just takes some creativity sometimes. And I think this period of 2020 is a great time to reshuffle things around. And on a practical level, I think community projects are really important. So during the lockdown, we were thinking, what if things get really bad and supermarkets are not stocked sufficiently? Like, what about putting up community gardens? And it can start with something as simple as that, getting a group of people, households in the community together and finding a piece of land where you can grow food on. So, if your supermarket's not fully stocked, you've got a whole food supply coming from somewhere else. Rainwater tanks, and I talk about communities because doing it in the household is one thing, but I think if we get together as communities, it becomes powerful. Setting up solar arrays, as we realize it's quite expensive for like 2 people to set up a solar array. But if we're looking at a group of 10 households or a whole municipality that decides to invest in a solar array for some function, this is doable, and it happens through collaboration and not necessarily just through me recycling my stuff. That has limited impact, but a whole community getting together and trying to be more off-grid, more sustainable, more locally resilient. I think if that is the inspiration that this awful pandemic has given us, then it would have been worth it.
Definitely. So I think, for everything you said I can see the necessity for it, because I think what COVID has definitely brought us is a chance to think and stop and think about, are we, going in the right direction? Do we need to change our habits? And I'm hoping that we'll get some positive outcome, from a pandemic at the end of the day, but always looking at the silver lining. But Adriana, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciated chatting to you again, and I look forward to see what else Proudly Human has got planned for South Africa and for Africa. And it's been great to be part of this international event and to share your story with the world. So thank you so much again for your time, and thank you.
Thanks so much, Melissa, and look forward to working with the Women in Tech South Africa and Global. Thanks for having me here. It's been a lovely chat. Yeah, looking forward to working together in the future, and thanks for the opportunity to share.